Welcome to Life Podcast as we journey through the Bible. Today we are in Matthew chapter 10. And then here we see that all the 12 disciples of Jesus have been outlined. So let's dive right into it. So Jesus called his 12 disciples together and gave them authority to cast out evil spirits and heal every kind of disease and illness. The same authority that was given to the disciples has also been given to us. So here are the names of the 12 apostles. Who are they? Simon, who was also called Peter, and then Andrew, Peter's brother. So Andrew and Simon Peter were brothers. And then James, the son of Zebedee, and his brother John. So James and John were brothers. And then there is Philip, there is Bartholomew, there is Thomas, and then there's Matthew, the tax collector, who's written the book of Matthew. There's James, the son of Alphaeus. Then there's Thaddeus. And then there's Simon, the zealot. And then there's Judas Iscariot, who later betrayed him. The Bible clearly writes here, who later betrayed him. It's interesting that Jesus knew that Judas would betray him, but he still kept him as part of the 12. I wonder why. We'll learn on later. So he is calling these disciples his disciples, and he's sending them out, and he's giving them authority. But then he goes on and gives them another set of instructions. Which ones are these? And he says, Jesus sent out the 12 apostles with these instructions. Number 1, don't go to the Gentiles or the Samaritans, but only to the people of Israel, God's lost sheep. So Jesus is calling the people of Israel, these are the Jews, as God's lost sheep. And then he's telling them not to go to the Gentiles and the Samaritans. And then you'd wonder, why did Jesus not want his disciples to go to the Gentiles and to the Samaritans? Why? What was the reason behind that? So let's just read that in Life Application Bible Study to understand why Jesus said that. And it says, why didn't Jesus send the disciples to the Gentiles or the Samaritans? So first of all, who is a Gentile? And a Gentile is anyone who is not a Jew. And then the Samaritans were a race that resulted from intermarriage between the Jews and the Gentiles. After the Old Testament captives, you can see this in 2 Kings 17 verse 24. You can read that at any time. And then Jesus asked the disciples to go only to the Jews first, because he came first to the Jews. This is Romans 1:16, which I would like to read. And it says, "For I am not ashamed of the gospel of the good news about Christ. It is the power of God to work, saving everyone who believes, the Jew first and also the Gentile." So the Jew first, and then next the Gentile. Okay, and then it goes on and says, God chose them, the Jews, to tell the rest of the world about him. So the Jews were chosen by God to tell the rest of the world about him. So they had first to know about Jesus before they spread the gospel. And that is why Jesus was telling the disciples to first go to the nation, the people of Israel, God's lost sheep, because they were lost. They didn't even acknowledge him. So they first had to know him before they could go and spread about the other nations. And then what else were they supposed to do? Go and announce to them that the kingdom of heaven is near. And he's also telling them, heal the sick, raise the dead, cure those with leprosy, and cast out demons. Give as freely as you have received. This statement right here just reminds me that Jesus didn't charge for any miracles. But even in our times right now, we see people who call themselves men of God, but every time they perform miracles, they're asking for some sort of payment and whatever. So we need to really know God's word so that we don't get manipulated by people who claim to be servants of God and they are not. And then he goes on and tells them, don't take any money in your money belts. Like, don't carry any worldly possession. No gold, silver, or any copper coins. Don't carry a traveler's bag with a change of clothes. Like, you're not going for a holiday and sandals or even a walking stick, nothing of that. But then he tells them, don't hesitate to accept. So he gives them a go ahead to accept hospitality because those who work deserve to be fed. So they were allowed to accept hospitality to anyone who gave it to them. And then we too can also learn from this, and we too need to take care of those who feed us spiritually. These are our pastors, our reverends, our bishops. We need to take care of them because that is where they get or earn a living from. Okay, and then he goes on and says, verse 11, whenever you enter a city or a village, search for a worthy person and stay in his home until you leave town. Sometimes there are discussions or people say that men and women of God should not be taken care of. They can take care of themselves. But the Bible is saying when you go to a city, search for a worthy person and stay at his home. This is just Jesus is just also telling us that we need to take care of our pastors. Maybe a pastor has come from outside town and he's looking for a place to stay. They don't have a place to stay. We can host them and take care of them. And then he goes on and says, when you enter their home, this is the home of the person who has a worthy person, give it your blessing. So you will be blessed when you host or receive a man of God. Give it your blessing. If it turns out to be worthy home, let your blessing stand. But if it is not a worthy home, Jesus says, if the household or town refuses to welcome you, if it turns out to be a worthy home, let your blessing stand. If it is not, take back the blessing. Okay? I'm sure all of us would want that blessing from our pastors and our reverends. And then he goes on and says, if any household or town refuses to welcome you or listen to your message, shake off its stars. In other words, you can't force people to receive the gospel of Jesus Christ. If you have preached and they've not heard it, it's okay. Let them be. God will deal with them. And then shake off your dust from your feet as you leave. I tell you the truth, the wicked cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, remember them, they were destroyed by God, will be better off than such a town on Judgment Day. So God is the only one who's going to deal with such people who reject. And then he tells them, I am sending you out as sheep. Sheep are innocent. Among wolves. Wolves are rapacious. They eat. They carnivorous. And then he's telling them to be as shrewd as snakes and harmless as doves. So this calls for wisdom, okay? We will face hostility out there. We will get wolves. We will face hostility. But we need to be wise, we need to be sensible, and we need to be prudent. But also that does not mean that we should be gullible. We need to be wise, okay? And then he says in verse 17, but beware, okay? Beware, for you will be handed over to the courts, and you will be flogged by whips in the synagogues. This one happened in the book of Acts, okay? You will be flogged by whips in the synagogues. You will stand trial before governors and kings because you are my followers. Jesus was preparing his disciples and telling them, this is exactly what's going to happen to you. You will be beaten because of me. You will be flogged by whips. You will stand trial. You will face all sorts of persecution because of me, because of being my follower. So he's preparing them for what will happen in the future. But then again, he also tells them, this is also going to be your opportunity to tell the rulers and other unbelievers about me. Like, even in that persecution that you get, don't use it as an opportunity to spread the word. Any opportunity that we get, we need to spread God's word, okay? And then when you are arrested, don't worry about how to respond or what to say. God will give you the right words at the right time. This is the Holy Spirit. He's going to give you the words. For it is not you who's going to be speaking. It will be the Spirit of God, the Spirit of your Father speaking through you. Okay? So no matter what you go, no matter what situation, the Spirit of God is going to be with you and is going to give you wisdom on how to handle the words and the situation. Okay? So don't worry about that. And then verse 21 says, a brother will betray his brother to death. He's preparing us that your brother will betray you. A father will betray his own children, and children will rebel against their own parents and cause them to be killed. This has happened. And then he goes on and says, and all nations will hate you because you are my followers. I mean, we've seen it. Like, there are places whereby, there are countries whereby people are not allowed to speak about Jesus, or churches or parades, or anything like that. So he's already telling them that all nations will hate you because of me. Your brother will hate you, your father will hate you, your child will rebel against you because of being with me. And then he goes on and says, but everyone who endures to the end will be saved. Okay? But then again, just because you endure, is salvation through endurance? Absolutely not. Persistence is not a means to earn salvation. No. It is just a byproduct of being or living a devoted life. So anyone who endures to the end will be saved. And then when you are persecuted in one town, flee to the end. In other words, it's telling like, if you're facing persecution, don't stay there. If people move to the next town, and then I tell you the truth, the Son of Man will return before you have reached all the towns of Israel. And then verse 24, he says something interesting. He says, students are not greater than their teacher. What does he mean? Students is us. We are the students, and Jesus is the teacher. So he's saying we are not greater than the teacher. And then slaves are not greater than their master. Students, however, we are to be like their teacher. So we are supposed to be like Jesus. And then slaves are to be like their master. Okay? And since I, the master of the household, remember we are the household of Jesus, we are in his household, have been called the prince of demons, the members of my household will be called even worse names. Okay? So, because you're in the household of Jesus, you will be called things you will not even understand or expect. But Jesus has already been called Prince of Demons. What else do you expect? Yeah, you can't be called anything great because he went through that. You also have to go through the same. So we will face persecution. And then he goes on and says, don't be afraid of those who threaten you. Like, human beings will threaten you, but don't be afraid of them. For the time is coming when everything that is covered will be revealed. In other words, we may not get everything or understand everything on this side of the earth, but a time is coming that God is going to reveal everything. So Jesus is like, a time is coming when everything that is covered will be revealed. So let us be patient, and all that is secret will be made known to all. Okay, what I tell you now in the darkness, shout abroad when daylight breaks. What I whisper in your ear, shout from the housetops for all to hear. And then verse 28 is also very encouraging. It says, don't be afraid of those who want to kill your body physically, attack you physically. Don't be afraid of those people, because they can only attack you physically, but they cannot touch your soul. They cannot touch your soul. Fear only God. God is the only one who can destroy both your soul and your body in hell. Okay? And for one to go to hell, what happens? You will not have accepted Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. So these are the people who are going to be destroyed, both body and soul. And anyone else cannot destroy you. And then he goes on and says, what is the price of 2 sparrows? 1 copper coin. This is like back in the day. 1 copper coin. But not a single sparrow can fall to the ground without your Father knowing it. In other words, God knows everything that happens to the animals, to the trees, everything. Nothing happens without him knowing. So, and a sparrow falls down to the ground, the Heavenly Father knows. And then he goes on and says, and the very hairs on your head are all numbered. Like, I wonder how many they are. How many numbers, how many hairs do I have on my head? But Jesus says, the very hairs on your head are numbered, and God knows them. Like, if you're combing your hair and some of it has come out, it's like number 21 and number 50 have come out, So don't be afraid. You are more valuable to God than a whole flock of sparrows. Like, I got you. I got you. Chill out. And then he goes on and says, everyone who acknowledges me publicly here on earth, I will also acknowledge them before my Father in heaven. Let's just pause there for a minute and ask yourself, do you acknowledge Jesus Christ publicly or do you deny him? You know, he says, if you acknowledge him publicly, he's also going to acknowledge you before his Father in heaven. But if you denounce him here, he's also going to denounce you there. So the choice is yours. I think I better acknowledge him here than be denounced by Jesus. I wouldn't want that. So he says, everyone who denies me here on earth, I will also deny them before my Father in heaven. I don't want to be denied by Jesus. I want to go to heaven. Don't imagine that I came to bring peace on the earth. Ooh. He says, don't imagine that I came to bring peace on earth. I came to not to bring peace, but a sword. I have come to set a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. Your enemies will be right in your own household. What did Jesus mean when he said this? Let's take a look at Life Application Bible Study. What did Jesus mean? And he says, Christian commitment may separate friends and loved ones, which is very true. Commitment to Christ will separate even family. In saying this, Jesus was not encouraging disobedience to parents, okay, or conflict at home. Rather, he was showing that his presence demands a decision. You have to make a decision because some will follow Christ and some won't, even in members of your family. Some people are saved, some are not. Conflict will inevitably arise, okay? As we take up our cross and follow him, our different values, morals, and goals will set us apart from others. Christ calls us to a higher mission than to find comfort and tranquility in this life. Love of family is a law of God. It is. But even this love can be self-serving and used as an excuse not to serve God. You can say, I'm spending time with my family. I'm spending time. You're putting priority on family instead of God first. God should be the very first priority and not anyone else. Don't neglect your family, number one, but remember that your commitment to God is even more important. Okay? God should be your first priority. So that is why you're saying bringing a sword. He's just telling you family will not be the same. Okay? And then verse 37 he says, if you love your father and mother more than you love me, you are not worthy of being mine. So he's telling you, you love your father? Yes, you should love your earthly parents. But if you love them more than God, you are not worthy to be called his disciples. If you love your son or daughter more than me, you are not worthy of being mine. If you refuse to take up your cross, okay, and follow him, you are not worthy of being mine. What does it mean to take up your cross? Life Application Bible Study says, to take up your cross and follow Jesus means to be willingly, to publicly identify, underline the word publicly, identify with him. You have to be willingly to identify with Jesus publicly, not just in the secret, but also out there. To experience a certain opposition. So you will experience opposition as you follow Jesus, and to be willing to face even suffering and death for his sake. Are you ready for that? And then he goes on and says, if you cling to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for me, you will find it. It's as simple as that. If you cling to your life, you just want everything to go the way you want, eventually you will lose it. But if you give up your life for the sake of Christ, you will find it. Okay? Anyone who receives you receives me. The people who receive you receive Christ. And anyone who receives me receives the Father. So if you open your heart, someone receives you, they receive Jesus, and also they receive the Father who sent him. Okay? So that's a good thing. If you receive a prophet as one who speaks for God, you will be given the same reward as a prophet. And if you receive righteous people because of their righteousness, you will be given a reward like theirs. Okay. And if you give even a cup of cold water to one of the least of my followers, you will surely be rewarded. Okay. And that is Matthew chapter 10. We are 42 verses. And then what lessons are we learning? Number one, the disciples of Jesus came from all walks of life. There was a tax collector, they were fishermen. I'm thinking the zealot maybe was in a political affiliation or something. They all came from all walks of life. So God can use anyone and will use anyone. Okay. The Jews were chosen by God to bring the good news about salvation to the Gentiles. So they are the ones who were first to be taught about Jesus, and then they had to spread the message to the Gentiles. That is why Jesus sent his disciples to the Jews first. Okay. Persecution is part of our Christian walk. We will not get away with it. It will happen. Everyone will go through some sort of persecution. So be prepared for this. Okay. There is a cost. There is a cost in following Jesus, and this is also repeated in Matthew 9, verse 19 to 22. The fact that it has been repeated in chapter 10 means that it will happen. It's an emphasis that there is a cost in following Jesus Christ. This is persecution. And Jesus goes on and says, those who endure to the end will be saved. And then Jesus is our teacher and master, and we are to be like him, members of his own household, because he's been called Prince of Demons, he will also be called all sorts of names. Okay? And then fear God and only him, okay? Because he's the only one who can destroy both your body and your soul. And then our commitment to Jesus Christ will bring conflict even from our families and our friends, but we still have to make a choice. It's a choice we have to make. And then we need to love God first, with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our mind. He is our first love. When we love family more than when we love our family more than we love him, we are not fit to be his disciples. And then finally, everything that we do here on earth has a reward in heaven. But as a consequence, the choice is ours. So what will you choose? We have to decide. So that's it for today, and I will see you tomorrow as we tackle Matthew chapter 11. See you tomorrow.